Welcome to the opening whistle of the weekly recess. I'm Mitchell Lee alongside Nick Izzo and Connor Vandemark. Guys, week 7 is in the books, which sounds weird to say. This NFL season is just absolutely flying by. And we've got a
It
big one
always
coming
do.
up this week. We've got the Jets versus the Giants. Not really big to too many other people, but to us, it is a big one. However, the Jets did not play this week. They're coming off their bye, hopefully getting DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner, maybe even Joe Tippmann. We'll have to wait and see. Healthy for the matchup with the Giants. However, before we get into the biggest game of the week, congratulations, Nick. The Giants with a nice 14-7 win over the Washington Commanders. There's no
That's right.
quarterback
That's right.
controversy because Brian Dable has come out and said that Daniel Jones will be the starter when healthy. Whether that is for the Jets game or not remains to be seen.
Yeah,
But do you
I
think
don't think
that there
so.
should be a quarterback controversy?
Um, no, because I would need to see more. Um, I can't say after. I mean, I don't have the exact numbers on when the last time Tyrod started, but if I'm willing to bet, it was probably when he was in Buffalo.
He
Um,
he started the season for about 2 or 3 weeks with Cleveland before Baker uh,
oh,
took
okay,
over his rookie season.
okay, yeah. So I think about the last time that he started and then compared to now, it's like, yeah, like don't get me wrong, like I'm
Oh, and
extremely
Houston.
happy that he.
Forgot about Houston in
Of course,
2021
yeah,
before Baker.
he's been around.
Yeah, he has.
He's been around Tyrod. No, I mean he did enough to win the game, and he has been in the league for enough time now that you just have to try to not screw it up and keep to your game plan as best as possible. And he made the throws that he needed to. But I don't think there's any controversy. I would think you need to see consistency in his performances to really say to yourself like, oh crap, like maybe we should start this guy. I don't even want to make it so much about a money thing, but you're also paying Daniel Jones a hefty amount that if he's healthy and if you're not playing him, you're going to get questions about that after the game. So um, I don't think there's controversy. We'll see what happens in the weeks ahead, but if Tyrod keeps slinging it like that, then 5 more games down the season, we'll see.
I think the controversy should be on the other side. Washington Commanders, Ron Rivera is on the hot seat, and it is scorching in
Oh yeah,
Washington. And this is a team that I said would make the playoffs, but I don't. As much as I loved Sam Howell coming out of North Carolina, and he's had some great moments this season. They can't run the ball too well, and their offensive line isn't protecting. But Sam Howell's holding on to the ball way too long, taking way too many sacks, and
yep,
they might need to just go to Jacoby Brissett if they want to salvage this season and save people's jobs because the Sam Howell experience has been a very turbulent one as of late. It's been very up and down.
yeah, yeah. One game he'll look pretty decent, and then the next game he'll look like he just reverted back to what he was before.
It's kind of similar
Similar situation with the Giants.
it's kind of similar to what the Falcons have going on with Desmond Ritter, where he'll look
Yep.
really bad for a game or two, and then the next game he'll come out and he'll play pretty well. And I thought he played pretty well against the Buccaneers in a big game in the NFC South, where the Falcons now take the lead in that division. 19 to 25, 250 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He had 38 yards on the ground and a touchdown, but he also had some key fumbles. I think he fumbled twice inside the 2 yard line, where you just can't do that.
Yep.
You've got to hold on to the ball, and they could
No.
have blown out the Buccaneers, but they had red zone issues, and Ritter was a part of that. So Ritter and Howell both have shown that they can make plays, that they can lead drives late in games, but they just can't. The consistency has not been there at all for either of those guys, especially Ritter.
But how much
Yeah.
do you how much do you that credit to that to the how not good the offensive lines are for honestly both teams. Like, let's be real. No,
Atlanta's is good.
No, Atlanta's is decent. I think Ritter is a very mediocre quarterback at this moment. That's my current thoughts. Like he's not going to win you games, but he's there as a placeholder. Like, in my opinion, he's not the future for Atlanta.
Arthur Smith's given me issues with that team though, because
agree
he's
with that.
not letting Ritter utilize the talent on that roster. You pick
Yeah,
you pick three skill position guys in the top 10 back to back to back years, and it's like Arthur Smith is doing everything he can to make sure that those guys don't get the ball.
Like, but the thing is, the reason I'm saying this, like, a lot of how we see quarterbacks this year is often through the lens of how well the offensive line is. No, the one thing I want to bring up is when it comes to another game we're probably going to touch on is, as a Jet fan, is a huge victory. Even though I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Patriots beating the Bills.
Yeah,
the Bills could not.
That's a huge victory.
The Bills could not handle the Patriots pass rush, and Josh Allen looked mediocre. Like, you can see, like, the stats in Josh Allen's games. When he has protection, he's unstoppable. But when he's not getting it, when he's being pressured and the defense is all over him, he looks like the most mediocre quarterback. And this has happened multiple times this season, where the Jets done it to him. The Patriots have done it to him this past game. And then we had the Jaguars, same thing, where they're not giving him time and space. And with that being taken away, they look pedestrian. So, and I'm definitely, like, if I have the numbers with me, it'd be nice to see. But, like, I'm kind of curious on how strong the offensive line is and how good the quarterback is and how that correlates with the media perception of how good that player is.
Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, they always talk about that. Excuse me. No matter who or what team they're covering. I mean, it's your foundation of your offense, and you know when you have a really bad offensive line, you can tell nothing is going to happen. But yeah, it's definitely a repeated pattern for a lot of teams. You see their offensive line is either injured or they're good players went somewhere else.
Like, I want to pose this kind of, like, thought experiment: is if you took Patrick Mahomes and put him on, let's say, I would say the Cardinals, not one of the lower ranked offensive lines overall in the past 2 years, how would the perception of Patrick Mahomes be in comparison to how we see him today?
Well, Patrick Mahomes has had some bad offensive lines. I mean, you guys remember that Super Bowl where
Super Bowl he was running for his life
against the Buccaneers, where he was running for his life, making like passes at a horizontal angle and still putting it on guys. So I don't know about that necessarily, but Patrick Mahomes is also a different animal than any other quarterback in the league. So I'm not so sure about that. But to get back to the Bills and Patriots game real quick, my concern with that game didn't really have anything to do with the Bills' offense. I think their offense will be fine. I think the big thing is Dalton Kincaid will have to step up now because Dawson Knox is hurt. And that's who they used their first round pick on, and he played nicely against the Patriots. My concern with the Bills is their defense is depleted due to injuries. They've lost Matt Milano and Tre'Davious White, who are cornerstones of that defense for the season. Von Miller's in his mid 30s coming off his second season ending ACL injury, and their safeties are both in their 30s as well. So the Bills defense is something that I've had questions about going into the year. I have more questions about now, and I don't know if they're going to be able to hold up with the injuries that they've sustained, the guys that they have to play. I mean, Mac Jones is playing for his career out there against the Bills. He had been benched 2 games in a row,
Yeah.
and he was throwing all over the field on them. This is one of the best Mac Jones games I've seen ever. And I think so much of that was because the Bills' defense was just, they lack cohesion right now because Matt Milano is the heartbeat of that defense. He's the leader of that defense. And Tre'Davious White's the best corner they had. And those are two guys that you do not easily replace.
I think it's definitely fair.
No,
I think it's fair to say that they're both a concern. It's like, okay, as the person who wants the Giants the most, what's your thoughts on the Giants defense, Nick?
Well, I would say it's gotten a lot better since the start of the year. It has, excuse me, it has most of the time been a bend but don't break sort of team, and that's usually their identity with not as many turnovers as you'd like to see, but usually you'll see them like give up like 50 or 60 yards and then they'll stall them out on third down. But I would say right now it's the best part of the team,
Because
if their defense is doing enough to keep them within 1 or 2 scores, then they definitely have a chance.
the reason I'm bringing them up is because of the fact that the Bills team that's supposed to be the let's be real, one of the top echelon teams in the league, only put up 14 points at the Giants.
Yeah.
And then only having the Patriots defense, which has been decent, but still like not getting it done, like against a game that you should win against a 1-5 Patriots team. Like that to me is a cause of concern.
It's like I mentioned.
Oh yeah,
They need.
definitely is.
I mentioned Dalton Kincaid. I picked him round 1. Tight ends usually take a little bit longer to develop and be steady, make steady contributions. And they took him round 1 as a team that had a closing Super Bowl window. So they need him to be they need him to be what Sam Laporta is in Detroit right now. That's what they need from Kincaid, because right now it's Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis never really came along the way that people expected after his 4-touchdown AFC Championship game. He's been fine, but he's not number 2 receiver. He's a number 3 at best. And they never really found that other guy. They need Dalton Kincaid to really step up. So there's going to be a lot of pressure put on him to, just get open for Josh Allen.
All right. So have you two seen the line yet for Thursday Night Football? By the way, we're recording this on the Wednesday the 25th. So you probably, if you're
Tampa, Buffalo. Morning, what is it
at
like?
Buffalo. At Buffalo.
4.5?
Nick, what's your guess?
What's my guess? Was it Tampa and Buffalo?
Tampa at Buffalo.
Tampa at Buffalo. I'm going to say that Buffalo is favored. This is a total guess because I have not looked at it. By 4.5.
I'm going to go with 5.
The books are saying -9 right now. Like
the Bills
-9 that are favored.
Huh. Okay.
Like that's to me a game that if I would throw money on, I would throw money on the Bucks to cover.
I'm leaving it alone for the simple reason of
I think that's
Tampa
going to change.
Tampa can't run the
We'll
ball,
see.
and you need to run the ball to beat this Bills team. I mean, the Jets did it, and
No,
they ran up
they
and down
run
the
by
field.
dump off passes.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Yeah.
And Baker Mayfield's questionable. Chris
the-
Godwin's questionable.
But the Bucks defense is what I think is going to cause Bills problems.
Yes, I can agree with that. Yeah.
That's I think this is going to be like the over
bet
under
the
for this
under.
is the over under is 43.5. And
I can see the under hitting on that.
yeah, like I can definitely see the Bills winning, but I think the Bucks going to keep this close. Like this is probably going to be I can see this game ending, let's say 21-18, something like that range. Like
Yeah.
it's going to be a stifling game. I think that Mike Evans would be able to. No, Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans have been that connection's been great so far.
Yeah.
And without Zadarius White, like who's going to stop Mike Evans?
Are you predicting the
It
upset?
should be.
I
should be
would
throwing
take
to
the
Mike
upset.
Evans.
I think the Buccaneers will they win the Super Bowl? No, but I think they are a good team.
All right.
Like their run game is their issue. Their run game is their issue. Like
Yeah.
no,
It's a big one.
like Rashad White's not the answer. But I think for the future of this team, like next year, if they draft someone who is a good running back, like there could be.
He's a good pass catching receiver.
But
running back.
if they actually had someone between the tackle,
That's what
White
actually
can catch
come through.
passes, but they just
Yeah.
can't have him run between the tackles.
they don't have. They
Oh,
don't
yeah.
have. So yeah, they don't have
That's
someone who
exactly
can't
it.
punch it through. They don't have like a David Montgomery type.
Yeah. Well, that would be a good signing
No.
for them.
That'd be a great
Yeah,
fit.
that
for
would
the
have been
team.
a good one. Let's move over to the primetime games from this from last week. Dolphins, Eagles. Eagles winning that one 31-17. AJ Brown continues his tear through the NFL. 10 catches, 137 yards, and a touchdown. Meanwhile, the Dolphins, I can stand on my soapbox again on two different things that I knew were going to happen. Well, one that I knew was going to happen, and the other, unfortunately, did happen. The first one is the Dolphins showing up small against a good team yet again. This seems to be a theme with the Miami Dolphins, people calling them fraudulent because of that. And I feel like the truth is somewhere in the middle. I don't know if they're fraudulent, but I also don't know if I would put them up. I don't know if they can win games like this in the playoffs. It's important for them to win the AFC East so that they don't have to play a road playoff game, because I don't know if they can go into a place like Kansas City or Cincinnati or Baltimore and win a tough playoff game. And the other thing that I've been just kvetching about for weeks now is the officiating is not getting any better. And the officiating in this game was brutal.
No.
The officiating in this
Yeah.
game was tough, and it seemed very one-sided. Now, Miami could have done a lot of things to help themselves out. Tua, that interception he threw, horrible. Tyreek dropped the touchdown pass, and the Eagles' defensive line seemed to really break through there in the second half. Particularly Josh Sweat seemed to just live in the backfield. But Jalen Hurts also looked like he was hurting a bit, no pun intended, throughout that game. Didn't want to run the ball, but found a way to make plays through the air. And after a brutal game against the New York Jets, comes through, delivers late in that game, and they're now 6-1.
Well, I will fill in for Tommy Spiel that he was very disappointed at them, but he also felt like that would happen. Someone who was, I had hopes in the Dolphins. Like, I think they're a fun team, but I thought this game would have been closer. And no, the first quarter, no, tie game, whatever. But the Eagles did feel like the more dominant team in this one. Like, I think the one thing I will say though is if they had Devon Achane, I understand the game is played with who you have, but I'm curious how that would have changed things, because he is that kind of dynamic player where he could maybe turn a drive around and keep it alive. Because let's be real, Philly's run defense phenomenal. You can't run on them.
Yeah, I mean, Mostert
Yeah.
wasn't able to
I don't
get
think it
anything
would be
going in
that
the first three
differently.
quarters of that game. They were really just
Yeah.
limited to the pass. And even then, Jalen Waddle missed a good chunk of that game as well. So it was very Tyreek Hill and Cedric Wilson based, of all things.
Yeah, and then mixed it with I think Braxton Berrios is like the third guy,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
I only know because they say it on the TV every like 5 seconds.
Well, between them winning and the top of the NFC had a very interesting week. Because we had the 49ers losing on Monday Night Football 22-17 to the Minnesota Vikings in a game
Kirk
where
finally got a primetime win.
Kirk played well. Brock Purdy, I'm going to hold off on the Brock Purdy criticism because apparently he was playing the last bit of that game with a concussion. So
Then why have him in?
He's going to miss. I guess they just he didn't start displaying symptoms until after the game. And there were people like, yep, this is the hit where he got the concussion. And after this, he was like 2 for 6 with 2 interceptions. But Brock Purdy going to miss the next game against Cincinnati. Sam Darnold's going to get that start. And
Yeesh.
the Lions, as bad of a week as the 49ers had, and they might have had a worse week just because of injuries, the Lions got absolutely smoked.
My
Losing
boys.
to Baltimore 38-6. I figured Baltimore was going to win this game because Lamar Jackson has been playing so well, and he was just kind of due for his receivers to make some plays for him. And he did, and they did, but I did not expect a 32-point beatdown the way that this was. Who's got to be feeling worse right now, and who do you feel better about moving forward between the Lions and the 49ers?
I think the 49ers will be fine.
I would say 49ers for sure.
I did not see the concussion thing with Purdy. If they kept him in the game, that makes me mad. You saw what happened with Tua last
Yeah,
year.
that's bad.
Like, as someone who's had friends who dealt with concussions from playing hockey, like after your fourth, fifth one, like they get bad. And I don't know Purdy's concussion history at all, but like as someone who coaches, 16-year-olds for hockey, like if I see a situation where is any sign of concussion, you're out. Like I don't want to put any player through that. I understand they're professional athletes, but at the same time, if you're going to put your team on the back of Brock Purdy, you want to protect your assets. Like, no, you have,
especially with all they have now in the technology, and the pop-up medical tent is right there. Every team's got their their physicians and their doctors. Like there's so much at their disposal in terms of the resources to make sure that that type of stuff doesn't happen. And then maybe he hit it well that they didn't say anything, but yeah, you definitely just don't want to see that because like you said, the more concussions you get, and you and I don't know his concussion history from what I gather, but
Are you guys saying that
the more you get,
you feel better about San Francisco?
yes, I would feel better about them. I'm just low-key mad that they kept him in the game, or if he kept himself in the game. Like the reason we have concussion spotters in the first place is to protect the players from themselves. Like the Lions,
I actually feel better about Detroit.
Like the Lions,
I think that's got a lot to do with the fact that so much of their offensive identity, whether you like it or not, is pounding the ball. And Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are just simply different runners. And I wish that they used Gibbs a little bit more with Montgomery in the lineup, sure. But Montgomery is their hammer. And they didn't have that in this game, and they felt a little bit lost offensively to get started.
I think
Whereas
the Lions,
Niners, if Purdy's hurt long term, like he's got that concussion, and the offensive line's been injured, McCaffrey's been injured, Debo's injured, They've had a lot of different things going on. Not to mention, Nick Bosa got his bag and has done nothing this season.
That is very true. Like the Lions, I think this is a good, like sometimes a good ass kicking definitely helps a team, like a good wake up call. And the Ravens definitely, I'm not concerned with the Lions either. I think that they will, especially with their head coach, like he's a wild one, and
In their division,
yeah, and their division's weak too. Like
Yeah.
I'm not like I mentioned last week in the podcast. Like I brought up, who do you think would have a better record at the end of the season? The Lions, the 49ers. No, I picked the Lions, knowing that like I have trust in this team. Um, I think it was a good wake up call for the Lions. I feel like there's much more. I think there's much more of a larger varying possibility with the Lions. And what I mean by that, like they could be a fantastic team. They also could be a very good team. With the 49ers, I don't see them one way or the other. I just see the 49ers as they're the 49ers. They're always going to be good. But I think the Lions have a higher ceiling, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that the national perspective is a little bit different. However, I think that the 49ers, I just don't know if they're going to ever be able to get over that hump. I don't know if they have the quarterback play to be able to do that. Whereas the Lions, I trust Goff a little bit more, especially within the scope of that offense. But
Imagine seeing that 2 years ago.
yeah, seriously, he's come a long way, and they've done a lot to not protect him, but accentuate his strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And with that offensive line, they're going to be able to run or throw the ball on just about anybody, except for the Baltimore Ravens, apparently. Which brings me to my next point, which is the AFC North had a crazy week where the Ravens looked like the top team in football, where everyone was saying that they're Super Bowl contenders. And I actually do agree. I think that they are going to be in the thick of it when it comes to teams challenging Kansas City for the AFC Championship. I do think Baltimore is going to be up there. If they can just get consistent receiver play like they got last week, Andrews, Zay Flowers is a beast. If you get Rashad Bateman to catch a few passes, Nelson Aguilar did some stuff, Odell, they've got some guys. If they just show up, they can cause some damage. But how do the Browns and Steelers keep winning games, man? Games that they should not be winning, especially Pittsburgh.
PJ Walker.
PJ Walker coming in for Deshaun Watson, who did he just quit playing football? Does anybody know what happened with Deshaun Watson?
I heard that he was a re-aggravated
I think
shoulder.
once he got his guaranteed contract, he just decided he didn't want to try anymore.
Yeah, him and Nick Bosa got the bag and just dipped. But the Browns defense, the Browns defense is just that good, except for the fact that they were not that good against the Colts because Gardner Minshew threw for over 300 yards, and there were plenty of coverage busts, and there were a lot of issues in the secondary for that team. They ran for 168 yards, so it was not a great day for the Browns defense. And the Cleveland offense, they totaled 16 for 37 for 183 yards passing and 2 interceptions. But they managed to win the game because they ran the ball very well, and Myles Garrett made some freakish plays.
Oh my God! So I googled Deshaun Watson as a
bad idea.
Bad idea.
No,
Bad
trust me,
idea.
this is good because the Browns play the Seahawks this week, correct?
Yes,
they do.
So
that is correct.
So first off, according to Adam Schefter, doctor told him he had a strain of subscapulars, so that's like the within your shoulder, with a rotator cuff, and he continued to have both pain and weakness in both movements. This type of injury in baseball normally causes pitchers to miss 4 to 6 weeks. So turns out that Devon Witherspoon of the Seahawks, on Watson being ruled out, quote, I guess the doctors over there in Cleveland told him he can't play, and he's finally taking no for an answer. End quote.
Oh
I
wow.
love it. Get him.
I
Wow.
mean, if anybody deserves it,
I mean, yeah,
it's Deshaun Watson.
he did it to himself.
I can't root for the Browns because of that, but I also can't root for the Browns because of just my disdain for Elijah Moore. Both of those guys together, just
Oh,
absolute no.
why don't you like Elijah Moore? What did he ever what
You
did he ever
you
do?
don't request a trade in the middle of a 3-game winning streak. You don't do
Just
that.
kidding.
But also, it's so funny because
That's
Jets
true.
Twitter was kind of clowning him because do you know that tweet that's like quarterback tweet, God is good, running back tweet like gotta keep eating, tight end tweet, derp, wide receiver tweet like the enemy speaks kindly and carries a knife. Elijah Moore had one of those tweets that's like he said something along the lines of like God is good and always going to protect me from the ops. And it's like, oh, here we go again with this. How is he already frustrated with Cleveland? He's been there for 2 months.
Yeah,
It's true.
definitely. Definitely. He's always been that kind of person.
He was the dog piss guy at Ole Miss.
Yep. The thing is with the Browns, to me, it's always been like a before Deshaun and Elijah was like I always had a it's like the your little brother kind of situation where like
You root for them because
yeah,
they've been
they're
so
underdogs. They've always been so bad. It's like to me
Yes.
as hockey, the Arizona Coyotes. I hope success for them. Or the Buffalo Sabres are also. I want success for them. And the Buffalo Sabres actually probably a good like analogy for that on the hockey side, where they've always been in misery. They always get in their own way for some reason. No, and like I really like Baker Mayfield, and I thought Baker was doing a good job for the Browns. No, like
Just
he
try
did
to
take them
play
to the
through that
playoffs.
injury.
He did probably try to play through the injury, and like I feel like they did him dirty, leaving him in the dust and getting Deshaun Watson instead. Even after all the allegations they went through, like after they left him high and dry, Baker Mayfield that is, and then went for Deshaun Watson, even after all the scandal shit he went through with that giant contract. I'm like, how can I feel good about you anymore? Like now it's like now you're the now you're Voldemort. Like who wants to touch you? And like
You left a joke just hanging in the open that I'm not going to touch.
I'm not gonna. I realized that after the fact, and no.
Yep. Not touching either.
But
both of these teams, the Browns and Steelers, just it seems like they win games that they have absolutely no business winning.
That's the Steelers' MO for the past 5 years.
Yeah. Steelers football is like getting to just one win above 500.
So
yeah, 9-8.
Do you guys watch the Bleacher Report's Gridiron Heights animated series?
I see it every now and then.
No.
I missed this week.
I've seen it, but
I
usually miss them.
The one from 2 weeks ago was one about the. It was like a quarterback support group, and the person leading was Jared Goff because
I saw that.
he graduated.
He made it out.
Yeah, he made it out, and the adaptation that they used for Kenny Pickett was so damn good as like, oh, I'm just a steel worker. I'm just eating, meat and potatoes kind of guy living in the Midwest. And I'm like, that is just the Steelers' identity right there. Just like, we just going to grind it out and get her done. And like, it was so dead on, but it makes sense. That's Mike Tomlin football right there. We don't care how we're going to do it. We're just going to figure it out and win.
And TJ Watt finds a way to make a play late. And in the fourth quarter, George Pickens finds a way to make a play late. And the Steelers beat a team that they had no business beating. There you go. The 2023 Pittsburgh Steelers story. Right then and there.
And you lose to the Texans.
Yeah. I've got a few more questions before we wrap this thing up. Who should be more concerned right now? The New Orleans Saints For the Los Angeles Chargers.
That's a good question.
I would personally say the Saints. I think. Not trying to
I'm
overthink it, but
I'm leaning Saints
um,
too because
I don't think like I like Derek Carr as a person and who he talks like about himself being, but I know it's not all him, but I don't think that he is the answer. The defense has kind of always been a little suspect of late, and now you have the incident with Chris Olave, um, who told the policeman after he got pulled over that, oh,
I
I
play
play
for
for
the
the Saints.
Saints.
I think the cop was just like, okay, and
That's that's
like,
second only to Marcelo Zuna last year.
yes,
I'm
gotta
Ozuna
be
from
that
the
guy.
Braves.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
that's
that guy
that's the
sucks
best
too.
one. But I agree with you. I think the Saints are in more trouble because I don't think either of those teams will have their coach return next year. I think that Brandon Staley and Dennis Allen are both gone. Perhaps they don't even make it to the end of the season. But the
I'm surprised
Chargers,
Brandon Staley is still there.
I would have fired him after the Jacksonville game last year.
Jeez,
But the
like,
Chargers, you
yeah,
feel good. Even though Herbert hasn't played spectacularly this season, you feel better about him long term, and you feel better
yeah,
about the money that you gave him. Derek Carr, on the other hand, I think could be, apart from coaching, because I do think it comes back to the coaching, the main problem with the Saints. He's been terrible for the Saints this season, and you've got stuff with him now yelling at Olave for not running a route or for stopping running a route when the pass was like 20 yards out of bounds, dude. Like that's on you. That's you right
yeah.
there. That the offensive line is bad. I know everyone says they're in cap hell and they always figure out a way to get around it, but I feel like the Saints are a ticking time bomb that just hasn't quite
Definitely.
gone off yet. And I didn't mind the Derek Carr move because they're in a weak division. You go get a quarterback, and it seemed like the Saints could easily take that division. And by all accounts, they should. This division is not better than anyone expected it to be. Maybe the Buccaneers are a little bit better, but that's about it. The Saints should be able to run away with this division. And it's the play of Derek
In theory,
Carr
yes.
and the offensive line that's kept them from being able to do so. Whereas the Chargers, I do have my questions with them. Quentin Johnston, what's the deal? Is he just bad? Are you hiding him? Is
Yeah.
he hurt? Was he hurt? What's the deal? And Brandon Staley, you were the defensive coordinator for the Rams. Why is this defense so bad? And they've been bad the
Yep.
entirety of the time you've been there. But I still have my bigger questions for the Saints because the Chargers, at least, hey, we're in the same division as the Chiefs. We're kind of always going to be playing for second place. But the Saints should be able to run away with this division. And they could still be a playoff team this year. They're only one game back of
Yeah.
Atlanta. But long term,
Plus,
this Carr
mhm.
contract is, obviously with stuff like the Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson and potentially even Daniel Jones. We've got some bad quarterback contracts in the NFL, and Derek Carr's is up there with the worst of them.
Yep.
The
I
thing with
agree.
the Chargers though is like you expected so much more out of them. No, after last year's fiasco of them, no missing the playoffs on the very last play of the season, and
Wait, what?
then the Chargers missed the playoff. Oh, sorry, they made the playoffs on the very last play of the season. That's right.
The Chargers were the team that blew a 28-0 lead in the playoffs.
That's right. I was thinking that the Chargers Raiders game that went to OT.
That's right. Yeah,
That's what I was thinking.
But that's
of.
still in their history.
Yeah, like you expected better from them though. Like you expect like the offense to turn it around and like it might be the same story this year how it's going to end. They're a 2-4 team, and it's technically the Houston Texans are one of the teams you're trying to catch right now. But like at the same time, like I don't know, like my expectations for them my view of them that is has definitely changed compared to the Saints. Where the Saints are like, oh, they have Derek Carr, they'll be better. But like I still didn't think the Saints were I didn't think the Saints were a tier above both the Buccaneers and the Falcons. I thought they were still like, oh, maybe a little bit better. Like they could still win the division, but it's still that division sucks. Like it always it's
The battle for mediocrity.
it's like the crabs in the bucket. They just keep pulling each other down as they try to get out of the bucket. Like it's how it is.
Yep.
And like to our conversation before, like when it comes to like how we see quarterbacks in the offensive line, no, if the offensive line was average, would Carr look much better for this team? Like, because it really does work on that value, and like I think the Saints are, in my vantage point, I feel like the Saints are in a better position, and the Chargers, I feel like they're still running up an uphill battle because they did lose Mike Williams, and yes, Josh Palmer has been filling that role pretty well for them, but that defense for them has always been suspect, and I don't have confidence that right now that they can overcome their defense. Like they play the Bears next week. I don't know if they're going to win because the Bears, I could very well run all over them with the offense, and their defense can't catch up. Like that line's currently 8.5 Chargers over under 46.5. I think this game's gonna be closer than people expect.
All right, so who's the first head coach that gets fired? That'll be the last thing I'll leave you guys with. Who's the first coach to get kicked to the curb?
First,
But not Belichick with his new extension.
Yeah.
well, Robert Kraft will never fire him. Bill will have to tell him that he doesn't want to coach anymore. That's just how it's going to work over there. At least that's what it seems like. As far as coaching or coaches to be fired, oh man. I mean, could this be the year that Brandon Staley finally receives that notice? I think it could be him.
I'm leaning Ron Rivera only because of new ownership. Otherwise, I would be going Brandon Staley as well. But because of new ownership, I feel like Rivera would be the most likely to get the boot mid-season.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I would say Rivera as well. Like the Commanders definitely had a much higher outlook. Like they thought they would be competitive this year, like they were last year, and like the fact that their stars, like Jahan Dotson, they're not giving the ball at all. Like the play calling for that team has been much different than it did the previous year, and not being up to expectations. And plus with the new ownership, like I would not be surprised that the ownership would know. It's the same ownership group that owns the Devils and the 76ers, correct? I'm pretty sure it is. Because if it is, I would not be surprised if they will definitely put someone in who is much more analytically like minded.
Mm-hmm.
No, definitely how the 76ers.
And that's not Ron Rivera.
That's not Ron Rivera. And like I've seen like the transformation for like as someone who lived in the area, like 76ers with a whole big rebuild, like trust the process, which now they're a great team. And now and with the Devils who were garbage for ever since 2014, now we're seeing the team that is expected to be one of the best teams in the league based on some models for the NHL. So like, I can definitely see, yeah, Josh Harris. Um, I can definitely see him taking that post of putting his own footprint onto, or his own fingerprint onto this team, where they have that identity of being a more analytically driven front office.
All right. Well, that'll about wrap things up. We'll definitely get more into NBA and NHL
So I have
as
to ask
those
though,
seasons get in. Go ahead.
did you watch the Frozen Frenzy yesterday?
I caught part of it.
Which
I
what
caught
was
part of it. I kind of went back and forth between that and the opening day of the
I did not. I
NBA.
was asleep.
I have to ask, what was your thoughts on it as a NHL observer new to the sport?
I definitely liked being able to see everything. I liked, as someone who doesn't know as much and is very unfamiliar with what teams are worth expending time on, and it's whenever we can get anything that's NFL red zone adjacent, I do think that it's if you want to learn about the sport, no, it's not necessarily the best one. You're not going to get the nuts and bolts. But if you want to be able to follow the sport, have fun with it, and just kind of, what a night of hockey is like around the league, I think it's invigorating. I think it's a good way to get people invested, and I think it's something that every league should have some form of. The NBA, this was their tonight was their first big night, and they didn't have anything like that. I think that was a missed opportunity, and I think the NHL should continue to put. And apparently, it did good numbers for ESPN.
That's good to hear. I didn't catch the ratings for that yet. The next one they're going to have is in February, as I'm aware
Ah,
of.
man, really?
It's more so the fact that because their biggest competitor is, especially in the weekends, like NFL, like they try to do it during the weekdays, technically speaking. Um,
But you have so many. I mean, for example, the way that I've at least the way that I've seen a lot of NHL matchups is on ESPN Plus, and there's a lot of them on a NHL Plus. Kind of the way that Premier League. I don't know if any of you guys watch any EPL action. Um, on
Nope.
Saturdays, they have I'm forgetting the name of it. It's like goal kick or something like that, and it takes you around different, you know, Premier League matches, and they have that for on Peacock, which is where you can see all the different Premier League games.
mhm.
So I think that on ESPN Plus they should have, on some weeks when it's a little bit more available to have, you can have it on ESPN or ESPN2, but on ESPN Plus on NHL nights where there are at least, you know, four or so games going on at once, I think that that would be a cool thing to have pretty regularly, and I think that it would do well, and I think it would get a lot of eyes. But that's
And
just me.
I agree with that. There obviously needs to be some tweaks. Perfect being the first one was a learning process for anyone. Um,
Yeah,
here's I'm trying to pull up where the next one is going to be. I know it is February. I don't remember the exact date of it. So because the one podcast that for those who want to go more in depth into hockey, I follow the three writers religiously, pretty much ever since been growing up. Now they have a podcast together, which is fantastic. Um, Greg Wyszynski from ESPN, Sean McAdoo from The Athletic, and then Ryan Lambert from Elite Prospect. So they do puck soup, and like Ryan had a really good point on it, and because like one of the big issues that hockey, I won't say big issues, but one of the complaints that people have with scheduling is like, oh, it's not like staggered enough. Like I know basketball does it really well where they stagger the times enough. Everybody can see a game, and if one game's in commercial or intermission, you can hop over to the next game. Hockey, so it's like, oh, you're starting at 7 o'clock. That's it. And they did try to stagger scheduling for this day where like the Frozen Frenzy, and if they had games where it was like if they had like three games in the 6 o'clock slot, then 3 more games in the 6:15 slot, and like did it by that way and have them spread out. So naturally, there's always a few games going on instead of just one game you're just focused on because all the others are intermission. No, I think it would have did much better overall. But yeah, I thought as someone who loves the game, like I thought it was great. Like I was just having screwed around on my computer, and I was like, oh, like so much action's going on. I can see all the goals, and I can. It's such a great way. As a diehard, I was very happy with it, and I hope they find a better way. I hope they really improve on what's already good here.
Yeah, the thing for me is just don't have it be twice a season type thing. Because if you do it just twice, 3 times a season, you're not really going to get to grow and evolve the product at all. Like you said, whenever you do something for the first, second time, you're going to run into some things where it's like, all right, this didn't really work out, or we're just working out the kinks of this. And yeah, it's an issue with any new product. But if you're only doing it twice, you're not going to be able to really fix those problems as efficiently. And that's my concern with something like this.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas I've seen something like that for the NBA, but it was also only on the NBA app. I mean, really?
Yeah.
Only on the NBA app on your phone? Like, I know the NFL Red Zone idea is a really good one that a lot of different leagues should be taking advantage of. And the fact that it seems to only be NFL and Premier League is really disturbing to me. Well, maybe disturbing is not the right word, but I just don't like it.
The only sport that I see, American sport that I see that will have issue with it will be basketball, unless it's like you're doing highlights of dunks, but like or great 3-pointers. But like other than that, like there's too many points that happen. Like if they just did like bouncing back between games, okay, but like why not just have like a quad box and just be done with it? Like
you could find a way to make that work, especially with fourth quarters and 7 o'clock versus 8 o'clock games. I think that you could space that out really well. Whereas the NFL, it kind of all happens at once. The NBA, it's a little bit more, especially on a night like tonight was. You had game at 7, 7:30, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and it's like, wow, you've got really, spaced out, this game's in the fourth quarter, and then we go to this game, and there's not really any downtime as opposed to, all right, now all the games are over, and then we have all the games starting back up from, first quarter, whereas you kind of always have late game action going. I think that it would work out really well with the NBA. The only thing is just that first hour or so, you just have to kind of pick and choose according to, all right, if you have a player that's, really hot, doing really well right now, or, a big game that's really close, you can, or yes, like a highlight play type of thing where you can kind of like cut into that. I think there's a lot of ways that you could, you could do it.
Like I think baseball will be a lot more easier compared to basketball.
And baseball's had it. Baseball with MLB Network with Quick Pitch, I think that's what it's called. No, that might not be what it's called, but they had something. And they had this since like 2008, and it was fantastic. And they would cut that into like studio coverage and analysts talking about it. I remember watching the Armando Galarraga fiasco with that perfect game that I remember watching that on their whip around show, and they had great coverage of that while also showing other games. And yeah, I think that it's a model that a lot of different leagues should be a lot quicker to try to replicate. It's a good thing. It's not something you should run away from.
No, I would like it for baseball, or I guess see a more modernized version of it, because I feel like at least when it comes to baseball versus basketball, like there's a lot more high leverage situations in baseball where like runners in scoring position, and like you have as a Met fan personally, like Alonso's up when like runners in scoring position. You want to like something that's going to happen, and because the fact that Red Zone doesn't really show you highlights unless something really happens. It's not really highlights. Like they kind of cut to the game. Oh, let's see what happens in, with this up bat. Boom. Okay, great double or home run. Like, no,
Yeah.
it allows itself so much better than it does for anything else. And plus, with the new pitch clock rules, it would be a much more seamless to go into live action to do a cut to a different game and watch something from there. Like,
Yeah.
definitely should. I think baseball should lean into it because someone who only watches the Mets, it will get me more interested in other teams around the league.
All right. Well, I'm glad that they got that going, and I hope that they do more of it. It's definitely a talking point that I hope other leagues have that discussion and figure something out. But yeah, guys, I think that about wraps things up. We'll we'll come back next week and see how that Jets Giants game went. Maybe Nick gets to be happy for that one, but I
No,
don't think that
no
will be
shot.
the case. So
No shot.
I'm sorry in
No
advance.
shot.
So
I will be. I don't want to use the term happy, but I think if they get like 2 field goals, I could sort of live with that and say, wow,
Nick Izzo
they
setting
put
the
up
bar
6
high,
against the
ladies and
Jets.
gentlemen.
Well, I mean, if you set the bar low, as soon as you pass that, then you automatically are much happier, and it's easier to
As a
look
Jets fan, I can
positively
tell
on
you
the
right
game.
now, sometimes you don't pass that bar, and you're even more disappointed because you're like, I set the bar that low, and you couldn't get near it,
Oh, oh,
and
I
then
get
you're
it.
even worse off than
I
you would
get
be
it.
otherwise. But all right, well, for Connor
Yes,
Vandermark
sir.
and Nick Izzo, I'm Mitchell Lee. Thank you for listening to the weekly recess. Enjoy a fun week. Sports are back. We got the World Series. We've got NBA, NHL, NFL. So enjoy watching sports.
See ya.
Deuces.